Hello everyone, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink, and still trying to deal with this scratchy voice, so just bear with me please as I get through this video. So for today's card, I am using the Honeybee Stamps Forest Friends stamp set, and I've inked up this main image with some Versafine Onyx black ink and stamped it onto Kraft cardstock, and then I am using my Prismacolor color pencils to color this in. I'm kind of going through a phase again where I am loving using my colored pencils again, and I especially love using them on Kraft cardstock. I prefer Kraft cardstock when using colored pencils. It's much more forgiving, I guess you could say, because of the color and the texture of it. Plus it makes the colors pop so much more, like those lighter colors like I'm using for the body of this little hedgehog, things like that. And I find that I don't feel any need to use any odorless mineral spirits or anything like that to blend everything out. I actually really like the texture of the colored pencils and, you know, the little line marks that show up and everything else. It just works. Whereas if you're using white cardstock, you have to be a lot more careful, or you have to work harder to blend things out, etc., because it's not as forgiving. You can see everything. So I just prefer using the Kraft cardstock. So for all of these images, I'm using 2 to 3 colors, or 2 to 3 shades of each color, and I just went from lightest to darkest. And just a very light hand. I'm not pressing too hard. I don't like doing that with colored pencils. One, because it takes a lot longer, and two, it actually hurts my hand after a while if I'm pressing really hard to, you know, get extra color down. So I just use a light hand, start with a light color, add a medium color in some of the darker areas, add a darkest color, and then I go back in with that lightest one and just lightly go over everything, and it kind of blends it all out, and I'm happy with that. So the only drawback when coloring with colored pencils is a lot of times it can, like the waxes, especially from these Prismacolor ones, can go over a lot of the stamped lines, and it kind of dulls those lines. That doesn't bother me too much. I do try to kind of avoid coloring directly over all the lines, but in certain areas like their little faces and that, it's kind of unavoidable. But I'm going to fix that in a minute. So I just went along and colored in all my little characters here, and once I was done coloring them, I took my white gel pen and added a bunch of little highlights and little details, especially the little spines on this hedgehog that totally made everything kind of pop. These hedgehogs do have like those little white spines on them. So added just little dots and highlights and details with my white gel pen. And then once I was done adding those, I went in with my Pilot envelope addressing pen. Any really good black pen will work. I prefer this one because it's super black and it's just a little bit glossy. So I went in with that and redotted their eyes, and then on the little bunny and hedgehog, I actually traced out like their little nose and their little face there as well, just to make it all black again and pop a little bit more. So once I did that and everything was dry, I'm going to trim that out with the coordinating die set. And then here I've got some pink cardstock. And I actually pulled out this older release. This is the Ocean Borders stamp from Honeybee. And I am loving this for backgrounds. It doesn't have to be water themed or anything. I just love the swirls in this set. I think it's so gorgeous. So I just put it face up on my desk, inked it up with coordinating pink ink, pressed the cardstock onto it, and then I put some scratch paper over that just to keep the ink from getting all over my hands, and then stamped that onto the cardstock. So after I did that, I die cut that with the largest of the Honeybee A2 double stitched frame die. And I also stamped or die cut some Kraft cardstock with a smaller die from that set. And then I have a scrap of white cardstock here, and I'm stamping the "Thank you for your kindness" stamp onto that white cardstock. And then I'm die cutting it with the 2 little banner dies that come in the Forest Friends die set. So I die cut the 2 pieces. And then to pop up this main part of the die to give it a little more dimension, I just used 2 narrow strips of cardstock that I'd cut down. And I'm just stacking everything together. You could die cut this piece multiple times and just stack it that way, but it was just quick and easy to just quickly trim 2 little strips of paper. And then I stack these all together so it just pops that up a little bit and gives this banner all that extra little bit of depth and dimension. And I chose the cardstock over using like foam tape because I didn't want it as popped up as it would have been with foam tape. So I did that, and then I grabbed some pink hemp cord. It just happened to match fairly closely with that cardstock. So I wrapped that around the Kraft cardstock and tied that in a bow. And then I'm going to pop this little main image onto there with some foam tape so that everything is just popped up and gives it that little extra bit of dimension. And then I'm going to adhere that little banner right over my stamped image here. So adhering that with some Nuvo adhesive. And then to pop this little craft piece up, I'm going to use just some craft foam from my stash. And I just chose pink because it was sitting right behind me when I made this. And I cut it down to slightly smaller than the craft cardstock. And I just coated one side of it with my Xyron tape runner. And then adhered that to the craft cardstock. And then applied more Xyron tape runner to the back of this craft foam. Then I can flip this over and press this onto that background that I had stamped and die cut. And then once I had that done, I can go on to finish the inside of my card. So I have some heavyweight white cardstock that is cut to 4 1/4 by 11, and I scored it at 5 1/2, so it's a top folding A2 size card. And I inked up this little cute animal image again with some craft colored ink, stamped that onto the inside of the card. And then the coordinating sentiment is from that same Forest Friend set, and I'm inking it up again with that Versafine Onyx black ink. I'm going to stamp that over this image here. And then there's all these little hearts in that Forest Friend set, so I just chose 3 of them, arranged them onto an acrylic block, inked them up with that same pink ink, and stamped those. And then I'm going to adhere my card front to my card base with that Xyron adhesive again, just applying a generous amount of that to the back of the pink cardstock. And then I'm going to flip this over and adhere this to my card front. And then as my final little embellishment, of course, anyone who knows me lately knows I'm obsessed, I'm using some gloss white Nuvo crystal drops and just adding those, and then I'm going to let that dry for several hours. I know Nuvo recommends letting it dry for 24 hours so they are completely dry. And that finished off my card for today. So as always, I will have links below the video to the supplies used, link to the blog post. All that info will be in the description box below the video. So check that out if you are interested. Thank you all so much for watching and subscribing and thumbs upping and commenting on my videos. I really appreciate it. And I will see you all very soon in the next one. Bye!